If you really want to use a Linux like a pro, you've got to understand its structure. And today, we're not going to look at it like some confusing maze. Instead, we're going to see it for what it is, a brilliantly designed architectural blueprint. So let's go ahead and grab our hard hats and dive right in. So does this feel familiar? You're trying to find something and you're just lost. If you've ever felt that way, trust me, you are not alone. The whole structure can feel super intimidating, especially if you're coming from a different kind of operating system. And that's really the key difference right there. You know, in Windows, it feels like almost everything is just thrown into one giant room, the C drive. But Linux? Oh no, Linux is like a meticulously planned building. It's got this detailed blueprint where every single file, every folder has a very specific and logical home. So where does a blueprint like this even begin? Well, like any good building, it all starts with a solid foundation. This is it, this single /. We call it the root directory, and it is the absolute starting point for everything. Now, you might be used to Windows where you have a C drive, a D drive, whatever. In Linux, it doesn't matter. Everything, every file, every program, every single directory, it all branches out from this one single point. Now, this blueprint isn't just designed for one person. It's actually built to house two very different types of inhabitants, and each one gets their own level of access. On one hand, you've got your regular user. Think of them kind of like a guest in the building. Yeah, they can do their basic tasks, but their access is limited, and that's for safety. But then you have the root user. This is the system administrator, the architect who has the master keys to the entire building. They have complete total control over everything. And here's where the design gets really brilliant. It keeps their personal spaces totally separate. All of a regular user's files, their documents, downloads, desktop stuff, it all lives inside the /home directory. You can think of that as the public lobby. But the super powerful root user? Nah, their private space is the exclusive /root directory, the head office. And this separation, it seems simple, but it is absolutely critical for security and just keeping things organized. All right, let's leave the user areas for a minute and take a tour of the engine rooms. The places that hold all the machinery that makes the whole system actually run. So check out how Linux organizes its toolbox. First up is /bin. This has all the essential commands, or binaries, that everybody gets to use, kind of like the tools on a public workbench. Next, you've got /sbin, which holds the system binaries. These are the heavy-duty tools that are reserved only for the root user. And finally, there's /usr, which stands for Unix System Resources. This is like a massive warehouse where most of the software and applications you install later are stored. It's a really clever way to keep the core system tools separate from the apps you decide to add. Okay, so we've seen the user spaces and we've toured the engine rooms. Now let's step into what is probably the most critical location in the entire blueprint, the central control room. And listen, that is no exaggeration. If you ever need to change how your system behaves, I'm talking its network settings, how a piece of software runs, your journey is almost always going to lead you right here. This is the etc directory. You can pretty much think of it as the system's brain. Now, it doesn't store the programs themselves, but it holds the instructions for how those programs are supposed to run. And they're usually just plain text configuration files. So if you need to change a password, reconfigure a web server, or maybe tweak your network settings, all of those instructions are going to be right here in etc. Okay, next up are two fascinating areas. One is for data that's really just passing through, and the other one keeps a super detailed history of everything that happens on the system. So the temp/tmp directory is basically the system's scratchpad. Applications are creating temporary files here all the time. It's actually what lets you do something like undo an action in a photo editor. Now, these files are supposed to be deleted when the app closes, but sometimes they're not. And that means old data can just linger here, which makes it a real hotspot for both data recovery and, for security investigations. And if etc is the control room, then var is like the flight recorder. It stores all sorts of variable data, but most importantly, system logs. Every single login attempt, every application error, every system event, it's all recorded here in real time. It's the very first place you should look when you need to figure out what in the world went wrong. So, we've toured the building. We've seen the foundation, the offices, the engine rooms, the whole shebang. But why does knowing any of this blueprint, actually matter? Because understanding this structure, it basically gives you superpowers. When something breaks, you're not just guessing anymore. You know to check the configurations in /etc or to go read the story in the /var logs.
You can boost your security because you understand that critical separation between the admin's/root space and a regular user's/home space. In short, knowing the blueprint turns chaos into clarity.
Look, this organized structure isn't just some nerdy technical detail. It's a foundation for you to build upon, to control, and to truly master. The system isn't a black box anymore. You have the map. So the only question left